Damn, I'm looking good. Well, that was stupid. Anyway, Duke Nukem. Hedonism incarnate. I thought it fitting that I talk about the infamous, and that's putting it rather lightly, Duke Nukem Forever. Roughly the same amount of time has now passed compared to the years-long development that was longer than both world wars combined. Duke Nukem 3D was hugely successful in the 90s first-person shooter scene. Although the build engine was considered antiquated by 1996, outpaced by id Software's fully 3D Quake engine. So, 3D Realms took the success and transformed it into a sequel, starting life as a 2D side-scroller, much like the first two in the series, before being turned into another FPS. First being made within the Quake engine and ultimately switching to the Quake 2 engine, Duke Nukem Forever was billed as a revolutionary experience, something ahead of the curve. Although the Quake engine builds didn't last long, as 3D Realms made the move to the more technically proficient Unreal Engine, which forced them to scrap everything and start over. This was likely due to the game's director, George Broussard, being dissatisfied by the Quake engine's struggles to render large outdoor environments. The Unreal build has gone on to become the most well-known of the unmade versions, likely due in part because of the epic trailer shown at E3 2001. The trailer is a beat-for-beat copy of the Phantom Menace's first trailer, although that doesn't mean that this isn't potentially the best trailer for any video game ever, and it's for a game that didn't even come out. But instead of finishing the 2001 version, which looked awesome, Broussard and the fluctuating number of team members at 3D Realms carried on making changes to DNF indefinitely. A new lighting system was added in 2003 to compete with Doom 3, a physics engine was implemented in 2004 to rival Half-Life 2. DNF was falling victim to feature creep. George Broussard had an obsession with Forever being the best game available, annihilating the competition. He needed a game that could do anything and everything. It got to the point where other developers had to stop him from seeing new games, for fear that he may see something he wanted to copy. The most outrageous example of this being after he saw the 2002 Thing game, and declared that Duke Nukem Forever, a game set entirely in the desert state of Nevada, should have a snow level. It's as though the game's life force was being drained as the 2000s rolled on, later builds looking as though they were developed by people on suicide watch. Eventually, 3D Realms ran out of money in 2009 and was forced to lay off staff, and the long-running legacy of Duke Nukem Forever was seemingly brought to an unceremonious end. This happening just as Broussard seemingly got his act together and was committed to completing development by cutting as much as they could to get the game working on consoles. Luckily, Gearbox Software acquired the rights to Duke Nukem in 2010 and completed what was left of Duke Nukem Forever, the game's now decade-and-a-half long development coming to an end on the 10th of June 2011. That was a rather abridged retelling of the game's troubled development. It was just a nightmare that resulted in those involved losing millions of their own money. Regardless, what's the finished game like? Do you really want to know? It's hard to know where to begin with Duke Nukem Forever's final form. It is a mix between a tragedy and a catastrophe. I guess a decent place to start would be the story, which is...
The aliens have returned! Run!
The story of a Duke Nukem game has always been inconsequential, yet here I feel obliged to talk about it because it is one of the game's biggest failings. The world of DNF is one where Duke Nukem reigns supreme. Everyone in the game, the only exception being the president, are infatuated with Duke, an entire planet of yes men, and the president winds up becoming a secondary antagonist. I kept expecting Duke to suddenly jolt awake and find himself in a world where he's a teaching assistant and everyone hates him, the entirety of Duke Nukem Forever being a dream. The dialogue is a crime against written word. Throughout the game, you'll find yourself glued in place and forced to endure minutes of dialogue from a character that's simply spouting the most bland, tropey and unfunny dialogue that's ever existed.
Duke, good to fucking see ya. I knew that retirement bullshit was just bullshit. Fuck that retirement shit. I just got back from helping my friend find his wife. Can't wait to pound him in the cornhole. Hooah!
Duke Nukem Forever is also real creepy, and I don't mean in a spooky way, I mean in a perverted way. Duke as a character comes off creepier than ever, and I've always found him majorly unpleasant. Worst thing about him is that his own burger chain uses dog meat. Like, what the hell? This guy's a piece of shit! And when he cracks a joke when the likely underage twins he's been sleeping with are killed, just makes him look like a psychopath.
What's happening to us?
Looks like you're fucked.
I don't want to play as this guy anymore. Whose sense of humor is this game trying to appeal to? Serial killers? I think the only funny line from Duke is...
Have a taste of my ball.
Oh, and how can I forget? The Hive. The Hive level is arguably the culmination of all the things Duke Nukem Forever does wrong. The ironic aspect being it's one of the more solid levels in terms of gameplay. Something else that bugs DNF down is the insistence on parody. It tries to mock all the things that people were critical of when it came to first-person shooters of the mid-2000s and 10s. DNF tries and fails to mock other games, especially that jab at Halo.
Duke, we've got your green power armor over here and ready to go.
Power armor is for pussies.
You know that age-old saying that people that live in glass houses shouldn't walk around naked? You shouldn't make fun of better games! It even makes fun of Duke Nukem 3D.
Access denied. Red keycard required.
Keycard? I don't need no fucking keycard.
You don't got shit on Duke Nukem 3D. Much like Call of Duty, Forever makes use of regenerating health and not health packs like in Duke 3D. The regenerating health bar doesn't bother me too much. I understand that not many people like the style of gameplay that accompanies it. The whole hiding behind cover and waiting for it to go back up frustrates people. Even though I can forgive the regenerating health, I can't look past the 2-weapon limit. Duke Nukem Forever's gameplay is a mess. Levels are supremely linear, unlike the ones found in Duke 3D, which let you loose in a large open level that you can explore at your own pace. There's also way less verticality in the maps when compared to 3D. It also misinterprets all of the cool interactive stuff that was scattered throughout Duke 3D, like pool tables, light switches, urinals, security cameras, fire hydrants, and mirrors.
Damn, I'm looking good.
Instead, Forever caters the gameplay to center around all of the things you can faff around with. Entire levels are dedicated to faffing around with things. Why interactivity worked in Duke 3D is because they were there to enrich the world. It was a novel concept in the mid-90s to have such a believable and interactive world. Here it's purely gimmicks and gags that eat up far too much game time. Every gimmick overstays its welcome. The fact that you get shrunk not once, not twice, but 3 separate times is insane. That should be like once for a single level. Plus, you get a good look at all those beautiful low-res textures all blown up and in your face. And I hate the obsession with driving toy cars. The insistence on physics puzzles as if it were 2004 is stupid. It was annoying in Half-Life 2. Speaking of Half-Life, the opening levels where you trudge through Duke's casino is as if the opening to Half-Life was made by an amateur porn director. It is genuinely awful. Everything after the Hive and Duke Nukem's Titty City are a moderate improvement. Especially the Hoover Dam portion of the game, much more enjoyable than the early to mid game. All the missions feel stitched together, because they are. Gearbox barely attempted to complete the game, just coming in at the 11th hour and polishing what 3D Realms had done for the 2009 build. Gearbox was more focused on the multiplayer, and they obviously didn't do a great job at that because the last thing people remember about Duke Nukem Forever is the multiplayer. The ending of the Crash Course level was moderately cool, wasn't overly reliant on having someone licking Duke's boots for 15 minutes. The following stage set inside the Duke Burger is also one of the better levels in the game. The shrunken puzzle solving combined with unique combat with tiny enemies is fun, and the shootout on the rooftop is the shining example of how good the combat combat in this game can be if they just let it be this. The gunplay is quite satisfying, the shotgun being super OP, having the power to send enemies flying, making it very enjoyable to use. It's just a shame there's so few moments where you can get absorbed by the combat, like in the Duke Burger firefight. Most of the best shootouts are wave defense arenas, which the game is overly reliant on as its primary shooting galleries. You'll rarely come across enemies as you progress through a chapter. It is frequently treated as a special event. I just wish there was more unadulterated FPS action, but the game would rather waste your time with pointless filler. Unusually, the PC port was patched to let the player carry up to 4 weapons from the default 2, yet this patch never made its way to the consoles. I guess Gearbox had given up on those players. Graphically, DNF is scattershot. Characters and weapon models are of a decent quality, yet the environments can be rather flat and barren. Outdoor areas look pretty bad, let down by low-res textures and a drab colour palette. Indoor areas are much better. Some nice volumetric lighting that makes the game actually look as though it released in 2011. Apparently, it's still using Unreal Engine 1, which they began using in 1998. Obviously, it has over a decade of new code layered over it, but it does mean there's still DNA from that sacred 2001 build of the game. The soundtrack is solid, the loading screen music specifically is great, which is fortunate because most of the game is loading screens. Sound design is good, gunfire is nice and punchy, as are laser blasts, although the Octobrains don't have that chilling scream anymore. They used to freak me out bad in Duke 3D, and every time Duke jumps, the exact same grunt sound effect plays. Most games by 2011 would have had an alternating selection of 4 grunts, but not Duke Nukem Forever, not to mention the high-pitched ringing sound emitted by your shades in Duke Vision mode. Makes them unusable at any volume where you can hear the game at all. Maybe I was wrong for praising the sound design.
This thing sucks.
Ultimately, the game is just a bit embarrassing. I mean, you'll feel embarrassed just by playing it, and it's just kinda shameful that the game spent so long in development and this is kind of the best they could come up with. It's just sad that the game isn't better, because there's a good FPS game hidden underneath all the crap that brings the game down. Ironic that a game intended to be groundbreaking would wind up being incredibly dated. The game can be enjoyable, even for extended periods, but when the game is bad, it's bad, and so much of it is, and it lets down the parts that are good. And the DLC isn't a major improvement. What's it called? The Duke that fucked me? Oh, it's called The Doctor Who Cloned Me. They haven't learned from their mistakes. You still get shrunk and have to drive another RC car. Is this a fetish? Somebody love giant women? I don't think I've ever played a game where this keeps happening. They should have made a throwback to boomer shooters, not some modern shooter that spends several hours taking cheap shots at games that are, at the end of the day, better. And it is the very thing it mocks. Duke Nukem Forever is everything that was wrong with modern shooters, and is so unself-aware of its own buffoonery. Unpleasant and mean-spirited. That kind of sums the game up rather well. Duke Nukem 3D is timeless, and Duke Nukem Forever is the opposite of that. Duke Nukem Forever is ageful. I want to like the game, I really do. I used to be a staunch defender of the game when I was like 14, which is when you're allowed to be wrong and stupid. It would have been better if everyone in the game treated Duke as a tacky has-been with his self-centered casino and fast food chain. The character development being Duke has to prove to the world that he's still good at what he does, and that he doesn't have to be so pompous for people to like him. Instead, the game makes the fatal mistake in believing that Duke Nukem is cool. He isn't. He's much better when he's tongue-in-cheek, kinda like Ash from Evil Dead, a lovable goofball that foolishly finds himself cool. And that's what I think of Duke Nukem Forever. Although, we're not done just yet. The 2001 build leaked in 2022. It was majorly exciting getting to play all these parts that have only existed in a 2-decade-old trailer. But I don't think there's anything anyone can do to make this game feel remotely finished. Sure, there's restoration projects, but we'll never get to see the bigger picture. We don't really know what 3D Realms was planning for the later levels, which are utterly unfinished. There's not enough any restoration project can do to complete what we may have gotten in 2001, which is tragic, because this would have been a better game than the version we got. George Broussard, the man that kept Duke Nukem in the prison of development hell, even commented on the leak, telling everyone to temper their expectations and reinforcing the idea that the game is unfinished, even though he's the last person on the fucking planet that should be lecturing people on what is or isn't finished. With all that said, there is one version of Duke Nukem Forever that is worth playing. The eDuke 32 source port mod. Although it may not be the length of a proper game and was made within the build engine, it's a much better representation of what Duke Nukem Forever could have been had it released 10 years before it did. Large open levels that not only live up to the ones found in Duke 3D, but faithfully recreate those seen in the 2001 E3 trailer. It isn't perfect, but it is free, evidently made with a love for the source material, and is a completed vision. Duke Nukem Forever is gradually being left behind. Most people are likely to have moved on from it, and younger generations unlikely even know the game exists. Which is a slight shame, because it isn't even the worst Duke Nukem game. There are redeeming qualities. And yet, the franchise at large is being forgotten. With Gearbox doing next to nothing with the license aside from the 20th anniversary re-release from 9 years ago. I think if Duke Nukem Forever has taught me anything, it's never to bet on Duke.